our talk today on our touch, the power of touch. I think, as I was saying earlier, our sense of touch is phenomenally important. Okay, and what I'm going to do, our aims for the session today is going to be to explore our tactile system. We're going to explore difficulties with the tactile system, if there are issues with the processing of touch, and then just explore some strategies for treating tactile processing challenges. Fairly easy things that you can implement at home or at school for the young people you work with. Okay. Right. So I don't know if you heard this little bit, but what I said was, I always think it's really important as adults working with young kids who have difficulties with their sensory processing for us to explore our own sensory processing. And I've got some questions here for you if you want to do them as we go along. And it's all about your tactile processing, your own tactile processing. This is taken from a questionnaire we use all the time in clinic when we work with kids older than 13, because it's really in depth. And it's also, I work a lot with some young adults, older teenagers, but also with parents. So quite often parents will say, actually, I really struggle with this sense or that sense, and then we'll look into their sensory processing in a bit more detail. Okay, so if you want to follow along, you can, on a sheet of paper, write the numbers from 1 to 33, and then we'll just explore those questions as we go along. I thought it would just be something to get us thinking. Okay, right, so this works on a rating of 5, as always this happens to you, or 1 is never. So let's have a think about these questions, okay, as we go along. How often do you become irritated by tags in the back of your shirt? Okay. I've discovered I've got some trousers recently that have a tag and they've been really annoying. Okay. How often do you become bothered by clothing or socks? Okay, this is yourself. Now, don't think of your child, think of yourself. We don't think of ourselves enough as parents. We need to do much more of that. Okay. How often do you avoid getting your hands into messy things? Okay. Do you tend to be more sensitive to pain than others, where people say, oh my gosh, you always make such a big deal out of something? Do you become bothered by small cuts, so like a paper cut? Do you notice irritating bumps on your bed sheets? Do you over or underdress for the temperature? Or do you seem overly sensitive to food or water temperature? Okay, so have a think about those. As I've mentioned before in previous talks about sensory processing, we actually have 8 senses. Everyone can always mention sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. So the first 4 are functional senses, okay? But we have our foundation senses. So you've got your touch or your tactile processing. Then we've got our sense of balance, which is our vestibular sense, okay? Then we have our body awareness, which is our proprioception. And then we have our 8th sense, which is our interoception. And this is all about the homeostasis or the balance within us. Okay, so are you, or as a child, able to know the difference between feeling hungry and feeling thirsty? Do they know whether they need to go to the bathroom for number 1 or number 2? Okay, do they leave going to the loo right to the last minute? That's all about your interoception. It's another fascinating area as well. Okay. So when we talk about our tactile processing, we're going to talk about our sense of touch, which involves a response to anything that is touching the skin. Our skin is the largest organ in our body, and we're going to get information through our skin about touch, pain, temperature, and vibration. Okay. Your touch is going to give you information about the world, and more specifically about the shape of items, the size, and the texture of objects. It's also going to be linked to your previous experiences and your memories. So you'll be able to look at something and know that, okay, that's a rope, so I know that that's going to feel a certain way. Okay, this then in turn helps us to understand our surroundings and helps us feel safe. So if we see an environment with loads of Lego bricks on the carpet and you don't have shoes on, you're quickly going to go, that's a dangerous situation, okay? Because stepping on Lego is never good. Yeah, did you want to say something? I thought there was a mic going off. That's right. And so it helps us to feel safe and to bond with loved ones. Okay. Claudia, is there a mic on somewhere? No? Okay, that's fine. I could just hear noise. So our sense of touch also underlies our social, emotional, physiological, and neurological development. Okay. I always think about the importance of touch of when you have a new baby. So I have two sons and they had very, very different births. My eldest son, who is autistic, and I always think about these things, like you think about the birth trauma and all of that. So when he was born, I didn't have a lot of skin to skin with him. He had to be taken to NICU. And I always think back then, so he's almost 20, the touch that people were getting when they were in NICU. So, okay, sorry, that's fine. So when a baby goes to NICU, the touch that they get there is very artificial. Well, back then, it's rubber gloves, it's pain, it's tubes, it's plastic. Whereas with my second son, when he was born, it was a planned cesarean. It was all very calm. And my husband and I had that whole skin to skin experience. Okay. And that's, I think touch is so emotional. Like I always think about that. And I think, oh, you know, and then you go into this like rabbit hole. Oh, is that why he's autistic? No, it's not why he's autistic. But you think about all of these things, right? He is very tactile defensive though. But we'll get onto that later. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so some more questions. Think about this. Do you crave being held or cuddled? I love hugs. I love hugs. My husband is tactile defensive and struggles with getting hugs, but he knows how to give a hug, a really good big hug. Do you prefer tighter clothing like your exercise clothing? Are you particularly excessively ticklish? Do you prefer to touch rather than be touched? Do you dislike light touch in intimate relationships? Do you become very angry very quickly or very annoyed if someone just accidentally pushes or bumps you? Okay. Do you dislike having your arms or back stroked? I love having my back stroked. I can do it for hours. Or do you become bothered when people stand or sit too close to you? So pre-COVID, that is. Okay. So have a quick little think about those. And I want you to think about yourself, not your child. Because we don't do enough of that. We don't think about ourselves enough. We don't put ourselves enough first enough. So think about you now, how you respond to touch. Okay. So we have 3 types of touch. You've got your light touch, your discriminative touch, and your touch pressure. So your firm, deep touch pressure. Okay. When you have information going to the brain from the body, from the skin, you have 2 pathways. So you've got the light touch pathway and you've got your deep touch, deep pressure pathway. Okay. And what happens there is you've got So I've just realized I'm doing a lot of demonstrating with my hands. So I'm just going to turn the video on and hopefully it won't conk out again. Okay, so hopefully you can you see me, Claudia? No. Oh, yep, it was that. I will stop that.
Aniesa, are you still there? Because it's just gone quiet. Hi, you back in? Fear it might be the turning your video on. That's
yeah. So I'm just going to leave my video off. I'm sorry about that.
Do you hear sort of lightly tickling my arm to sort of demonstrate?
Yeah. Please, can you just demonstrate everything that I'm going to be saying? Right. Okay. So let me just get this share screen back up again. I'm so sorry, guys. I have no idea what's happening. This is usually it goes quite well. Did you get up to this stage? Did we get here? Yeah.
We absolutely could see you. It's just as soon as you try to turn the camera on, unfortunately, I think it's just too much for your computer this morning.
It's just too much. Well, yeah, that's absolutely fine. So, okay, I'm just going to carry on if that's all right. So you've got your 3 types of touch. So if you go, at the moment, I'm gesturing with my hands. So you've got 2 pathways that take the tactile information to your brain. Okay, if you want to imagine the M25, I think we all know the M25 fairly well. Your light touch is going to take a long time to subside. Okay, so you've got your light touch, and instead of going from Leatherhead to Reigate, junction 9 to junction 8, it's going to go junction 9 to junction 10, and it lasts that long, if that makes sense. So it's quick, it's very fast, but it lasts very long. If you think of your deep touch, it's going to go straight there. Okay, so junction 9 to junction 8, and that's what it's going to do. So your light touch is really, it's there to keep us safe. Okay, it's there to protect us. So anything lightly tickling your skin, some of you might be quite happy to do that. And that might be fine if you're just, it's the daylight, you know where you are, you can see what you're doing, you just lightly touch your face. If I'm outside and I'm trying to do the recycling bins and something brushes my skin, I'm probably going to freak out. I'm probably going to think, oh my gosh, I'm being attacked by a ginormous spider or something. Okay, so your light pathway is going to respond immediately, but the information isn't always going to be specific. It's not always going to be accurate. So you might know that there's pain, but you might not know what type of pain it is. Okay. Your discriminative touch is what's going to be really specific and detailed about what is touching us or what we're touching. And it's going to tell our brain how something feels based on our previous experiences. So if there is sticky resin, or you'll be able to say, oh, I know this, it feels like honey or something else. It feels like foam. Okay. And this is going to allow for really accurate and precise fine motor skills. And then we have our touch pressure, also called firm touch or deep touch pressure, which is the hero of the story. And it tells us how hard we are squeezed or touched, how tight or loose our clothes are, how tight or loose your shoes are, for example. So, actually my shoe's not very tight, so I'm quickly going to just tighten my laces again. Okay. when we have tactile difficulties, I'm just have a quick drink. We can have difficulties. So if you think back to when I spoke previously about sensory processing, you can have difficulties in with your modulation. So how hard or soft something feels in terms of how responsive you are to it with your discrimination and also with your praxis. So we'll get into that because that's something that is quite often overlooked as well. Okay, so some more questions. Do you dislike hair cutting, hair shampooing? So for years, my husband could not go to the hairdresser and I had to cut his hair. It was not a good look, but that's fine. Do you dislike fingernail or toenail cutting? Do you struggle to pet animals due to the feeling of their fur? Do you prefer long sleeves and pants? This is American trousers. Do you dislike it when you have water in your face from a shower? Dislike going barefoot? Do you prefer baths to showers? Do you become very irritated when splashed with water? So when our kids were little and we were in the swimming pool, my husband used to really get annoyed with them. And it would kind of be like we had a swimming pool, there are loads of kids, you know, so that's quite, yeah, bless him. Okay. Give you a second, have a look at those. Okay, so when we think of poor modulation, what we're going to think is that it can cause us to respond in 3 different ways. So the first way is that it can take a really long time for us to respond or to notice touch. So if you don't notice that your hands are dirty or that you've got a piece of food stuck to your face, quite often I see kids who don't cry when they're hurt or injured. They don't notice when they're being touched or when they're being pushed. Okay, so it'll take a long time to respond. You can have it where you under-respond in the sense that you want to seek out extra touch. So you're constantly going to be touching others. You're going to be touching teachers' hair. Often teachers will say to me, he's constantly stroking my hair and it's getting greasy. They'll love messy activities. They'll touch everything. They'll lick everything. And so those are the ones who are always seeking out extra touch. And then we've got those who are very sensitive to touch, who find it incredibly painful, incredibly overwhelming. So tasks such as nail cutting, face washing, they'll find really hard. Different food textures is going to be really, really uncomfortable. Certain clothing textures, labels or seams are going to feel really horrible to them. And you have this whole idea or this concept of tactile defensiveness is very, very common. Okay. And it's probably one of the biggest reasons why we would have kids refer to us when they have difficulties with their tactile processing. When we think about discrimination, that is knowing what is the thing that we're touching or touching us and where we're being touched. So what is touching my hand? Is it a spider or is it just a thread from my jumper? Is something hot or is it cold? Is it in between? What's the texture of something? So think of all the words that you can have to describe how something feels. Is it hard? Is it soft, squishy, prickly? You know, all of those words which lets you know. And so you might describe something as, oh, this feels like bubble wrap. Okay, that type of thing. The size of something, is it small or big? Is it medium? Is it teeny tiny? Where are you being touched? Are you being touched in between your fingers? Are you being touched behind your knee? It's going to be that thing that when you are looking around in your bag to find something without looking, that's the hairbrush. Oh, I think that's a mask, that's a pen, that's a coin. Okay, if you're feeling for coins in the coin side of your purse or your wallet, is that a 10p? Is that a 50p £1 coin? Or actually, no, that's plastic trolley coin. Okay. And when we talk about poor praxis, so touch discrimination has been really closely linked to dyspraxia, and this is quite often overlooked. And when you struggle to locate touch or where you're being touched, it's a sign of dyspraxia. So one of the assessments we will do is we go through and we would touch a child, say, on the back of their hand while their eyes are closed, and ask them to point to where they feel like they were touched, okay? Struggling to recognize the shape of an object. So another assessment is we would give them, say, for example, a square. They can't see it, they feel it, and then they have to say, okay, that was the shape there that I was touching, and they'll then point to the square, the star. And it helps create what we call our body scheme, so a map of your body. So this is going to help us how to learn how to play, how to plan, how to organize our body movements, okay? So it's really important for that. These questions, you'll notice, are a bit more about discrimination. Do you dislike shaving? Do you constantly chew objects, mouth objects? Do you feel less pain than others? Do you find yourself covered in bruises and you have no idea how you got them? Do you tend to touch objects to explore them? Do you struggle to find objects without looking? So you have to actually physically look and see what it is you're looking for. Do you find it difficult to put shaving foam on your legs or underarms or your face? Okay. Do you struggle to know when food is stuck in your face, or if you need to blow your nose? Or do you need to have rough, coarse textures next to your skin in order to notice them? Okay. Why is our touch so important for learning and independence? Now, it's not just learning in school, because school isn't the only way that we learn, or the only place that we learn. It's all about independence. As OTs, that is what we promote. We promote function and we promote independence. So your touch is going to tell you all about how you can develop your good fine motor skills. So doing your buttons, putting your earrings on without looking, holding your juice box so that it doesn't all squeeze out, okay? So that's all going to be your fine motor skills. But it's also going to be related to your emotional and self-regulation. So if I think of how often I will comfort someone just through a hand on their forearm, just patting their heads, trying to bond them or to bond with them or to reassure them. And at the same time, if you are wearing clothes that you perceive as being painful or itchy, it can then cause you to be really anxious, okay? If you might recognize this, or some of these kids, they are going to be the ones who have to touch everything. They need to lick objects. They might have really poor fine motor skills. They don't notice when they're being touched. They don't notice when they're dirty, when they have messy hands. They'll often drop things. So they'll often drop their pencil, for example. Or you could have a really high pain threshold, so they don't notice the bruises. Or you could have those kids who are really over-responsive. They will pull away the lightest touch. If their friend touches them, they'll say, oh, he pushed me, he bumped into me. They'll dislike certain clothes or food, and just really resisting anything new, any new routines, or a change in their routines as well would cause a lot of anxiety. Okay, so a little bit about tactile defensiveness. So Jean is the OT who brought sensory integration to us, and everyone thinks she's amazing. Well, she was, she's done now. And she thought that we become oversensitive to touch because our brain is paying too much attention to light touch, okay? So instead of listening or registering the information that's coming from our discriminative pathway, what the brain is doing is that it's paying attention to the light touch and protective sensations. And those are the ones that's there to alert us to a problem or a threat and to keep our body safe, okay? She thought that every time our brain gets a message from the pathway, it initially thinks something is wrong. So you go into your fight flight, you're on high alert, okay? And what we're doing is adults and kids who are tactile defensive will interpret just ordinary touch sensations or clothing textures or hugs as a threat. Your brain there is paying much more attention to the light sensations than kids who don't have this tactile sensitivity, okay? You find that what you can then see is that this is why we have adults or kids who are anxious, they have meltdowns or arguments, or they avoid activities because they feel that touch to them is as though they have touched something hot, or a spider has walked into them, or they walked into a spider web. And everyday touch, just innocuous touch, is going to activate their protective system of their brain, and they're going to have this fight, flight, or freeze response. Okay. Some may even go as far as to say it's painful. So they'll find it quite hard to ignore these sensations. So imagine you have a little stone in your shoe and you can't focus until you've stopped to take that stone out. Okay, so it could be the tag on your shirt. You can't just ignore that sensation. You need to get away from it. You need to get rid of it. Okay. Okay, so this is where we get into what we can do to support, to help our own tactile processing or the kids we work with. Okay, so we want to avoid light touch. If you have a child who you know has difficulties with touch, with any touch, you're always going to approach them with a firm touch. Okay, kids often will absolutely find tickling incredibly challenging and overwhelming, but they'll still laugh, and it's that kind of that nervous laugh. They're not enjoying it. Okay, so just be really, really clear. If you know your child doesn't like being tickled, then, you know, don't tickle them. Also advocate for them. So when you have family who come around and they want to tickle your baby or tickle your child, just say, actually, no, they don't want to be touched. Okay. The same way advocating for your kids in terms of avoiding light touch is your child does not have to give every single family member a hug and a kiss every time they see them. It's their bodies. It's how they feel about touch. If they want to give you a hug, sure, come up and give me a hug. But don't expect or demand that they have to do this every time. Okay. Always warn the child before you're going to touch them. So you could say something like, oh, Sam, I'm just going to take a leaf out of your hair. Or, Joe, let me just wipe this food off your face. Okay. I'm just going to wipe your face now with a cloth. Always warn a child rather than just go in and clean their faces. So I can remember years back, it used to be, oh, a parent would just put a little bit of spit on their thumb and just come in and just wipe the jam or something that was on your face. Okay. We want to have deep pressure. Okay. As I said, deep pressure is going to be your hero, firm touch. And what you can do at home to get firm touch in is you can use really deep pressure by using deep squashes. So if you have a peanut ball or an exercise ball, rolling that over your child's back while they're lying on their tummy, either rolling it up and down or just squashing it down. If you don't have peanut balls or therapy balls, using sofa cushions is really quite good. So you can make sandwiches with them and just keep the pressure static. If the child says, actually, I'd like you to bounce it, then you can do the rhythmical bouncing. Okay. We used to do a thing called a pile up, where you'd have like all the cousins and everyone would pile on top of each other. And there was always one who wanted to be at the bottom, always. That may have been me. We talk about vibration as being a form of deep pressure. So quite often when a child is struggling to have their teeth cleaned, I would suggest using a vibrating toothbrush, because that will give just a different sensation to them, okay? I'd also suggest to parents, don't go and buy the most expensive vibrating toothbrush. You can get really, really cheap little ones. And that's absolutely fine, and give that to your child to either play with before they brush their teeth or when they're brushing their teeth. Okay, there's also a load of different vibrating toys you can get from shops like Tiger or Amazon. You have like deep hand massages that you can try. I would steer away from, I'd always look for something on Amazon or online before you go to a special needs shop, because you're just going to pay so much more for that. Okay. What I suggest to parents, if you have a child who's really struggling with having their nails cut, I always start by doing deep pressure from their forearms down, like from their shoulders, deep pressure all the way down. And when I get to the hands, I'm still doing the deep pressure. And then I put some deep pressure on the nail beds before cutting that for each nail. Okay, deep pressure around the face before you're going to wipe the child's face. What I'm going to do now, sorry, I'm doing a lot of gesturing, and this is kind of our last interactive slide. So I'm going to stop that share. I will send these out to you guys. I'm going to stop the share. And hopefully you're not going to lose me. If you do, then it's just a sign. Let's see. Have you lost me? Have I lost you?
Still not come up on the screen, but we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yes.
Because obviously, no. Is it working? Shucks.
Ah,
So frustrating. It worked before, hasn't it? Oh, can anyone else see Aniesa? Maybe it's just me. Can I just double check? Rosie, can you see? No, other people can't see you either, I'm afraid. Oh dear, that's frustrating, isn't it?
hey, can you hear me? Can you see me? That is so frustrating. No.
So you're literally just doing start video, are you?
Let's try this. Sorry, guys.
Everyone can hear you, but they can't see you. That's basically what.
Let's stop the video again.
Let me have a look at the participants. It's showing up. Yeah, it's showing up like you've got your video on. Met you.
Recording in progress.
That is so frustrating.
You've got both on, so
okay, so I'm just going to go through the last slide.
Aniesa, can you
very
mute
quickly? Sorry?
Can you mute the laptop?
I think my laptop is off now. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys, I just I have no idea what's happening, but anyway, so what I was trying to say is I was just going to do a bit of demonstrations with my hands. So when you are doing the deep pressure, what I was trying to explain is, if you're going to start with, if you want to cut your child's nails, I would start up there, just do deep pressure all the way down, and you can do this simultaneously on both sides. And when you get to the hand, just do firm touch, and then each finger you're going to cut. If you just put some pressure on the nail bed, quick little cut, nail bed, quick little cut. One of the other things I also suggest is, as soon as you think your child is able to, let them cut their own nails. Okay, I think that's one of the best skills you can give them in life, is to be able to cut their own nails so that they can feel in control, and that reduces that anxiety as well. When we're going to, maybe if you're looking at toothbrushing, you can also get a child to just do some deep pressure all around their own face, or you can do that for them. So just squeezes there, again warning them that you're going to touch them, or also getting them to do that self-touch as well. Okay, you can do, we do something called the World Bible brushing protocol, which is really specific and is really hard to implement, but it works wonders. For an older child, you can get them to brush themselves, okay, with certain brushes, or even just a loofah. Okay, do a lot of tactile play, so rice, pasta, packaging foam, sand, all the light, the dry stuff, but also the wet textures, so therapathy or soapy foam as one of my most favorite things. You can get it from Sainsbury's or Asda. It's supposed to be for the bath, but the nice thing is, you can see if I do that, it then clears off my hand. So that's a really good one to get. It's about £2 in Asda, and also smells nice. One of the other things that I use a lot of, but is really expensive, is this, which is called Happy Senso Gel. I'm going to put some, not sure quite how well you're going to be able to see this, but I'm going to put some on my hand, on my fingertips. And I don't know if you can hear that, but you can see it's crackling. And can you hear the different sounds it's making as I'm, so that actually is quite cold. And it feels like popping candy, you know, those stuff you used to eat. And that's a really nice way of getting your extra tactile play in. I'd say if you have a child who needs to touch everything, give them a tactile fidget. So I like the twirly key rings. I think they're great because they can be attached to a belt loop, or just onto a child's bag or their shirt, a buttonhole, and they can be accessible at all times. What I always say about tactile fidgets, or focus tools as we call them, is that you want to make sure that it's not distracting to the child or to others, although they're not going to use it as a weapon and spin it around and hurt other people. We then talk about heavy work, which is like magic, and heavy work is anything that's going to involve all your muscles. So it's coming back to proprioception, the pushing, the pulling, pushing against in a lycra tunnel or a body sock, any of those things. That's going to be really heavy work. And then if you're going to give oral tools for regulation, for older kids, I might give gum. We can do things as giving them a chew that's just attached to their clothes. That would work quite well. Getting them to drink yogurt through a thin straw, or a thin liquid through a thin straw, or a thicker liquid as well, getting them to use that. Bubble mountains, I don't know if you know what that is, where you put some washing up liquid or some soap in a bowl and they blow with straws, and you get these big mountains of bubbles coming, and that's also really organizing and regulating. And then some of the older kids, I do give them gum, but the gum is usually given with a contract that you will not leave it in all sorts of random places. Okay. I'm now going to ask for questions or a chat, because I have felt very disconnected from everyone. So please, do we have any questions? I'm so sorry about the whole, everything going wrong.